You ever have one of those moments where you realize someone doesn't just disrespect you? They don't even believe you exist as a human being. That was me the morning I watched a stranger's SUV roll straight through my ranch gate, like it was the entrance to a grocery store parking lot. And I remember thinking, this cannot possibly be real life. My name's David Caldwell. I live on a little stretch of land out near Red Mesa County, New Mexico. The kind of place where mornings smell like dust and hay, and evenings sound like crickets and quiet wind. And for the most part, life is steady and honest and makes sense, or at least it did until the HOA across the highway decided my land belonged to them. I wasn't trying to live some dramatic cowboy life or anything. I was just trying to get through normal days, fix fences, plant tomatoes, keep the cattle fed, and be there for my wife, Hannah, who at the time was 7 months pregnant and already nervous enough about the world without strangers randomly driving across our backyard like it was a scenic shortcut on Google Maps. The first time she came through, I remember I froze for a second because the picture didn't match the world. You know what I mean? My brain knew this land, every inch of it, and nothing about that white luxury SUV belonged in the middle of my dirt driveway at 6:30 in the evening. She stepped out like she owned the horizon, mid-40s maybe, tidy tennis club haircut, perfect polo shirt, sunglasses that probably cost more than my wedding ring, and this expression on her face like she'd wandered into a store and didn't see a clerk where she expected one. I kept my voice steady because my dad raised me to be decent before anything else. "Ma'am, this is private property." She laughed, actually laughed. "Relax, it's just a shortcut. You folks have plenty of space. It's not hurting anything." Then she handed me a card. Meredith Lane, President, Mesa Ridge Community Association, and said it like it was supposed to mean something powerful. "Call me if there's a real problem." Then she got back in her car and drove off like the conversation was over and the world had voted in her favor. I wish I could tell you that was the end of it, that I went inside, told Hannah, we shook our heads at entitled people, and life went on. But that'd be a lie. Because Meredith didn't just use the shortcut, she claimed it. Next morning, same SUV, same confident cruise right through my gate, like my family name wasn't staked into the dirt here for 3 generations. By day 3, she had a passenger. By day 5, there were multiple cars. By week 2, I had tire ruts slicing through my garden rows. My cows were spooked constantly. And Hannah, she wasn't sleeping anymore. She'd stand at the kitchen window at night, just listening for engines. I tried the good guy route first. Posted nicer signs, then firmer ones. Talked to the sheriff's office, who shrugged and said put up signs and hope people behave. Talked to the HOA, big mistake. Walking into an HOA board meeting feels like stepping into a courtroom run by people who really wanted power but never got enough of it. And Meredith sat there at the head table like a queen talking about community benefit and easement spirit and neighborly cooperation, twisting words until up sounded like down and private sounded like public. And I watched a room full of people nod along, because folks will happily support injustice as long as it benefits them. Meanwhile, back home, my land didn't feel like home anymore. It felt invaded. Violence creeping in quietly on 4 wheels and polite smiles. One night, Hannah sat beside me on the bed with tears. She didn't even have the strength to fight anymore. "David, I don't feel safe here." And if you've ever loved someone enough that their fear turns into your oxygen, then you know that was the moment something inside me stopped being gentle and started being determined. Not angry, not vengeful, just done letting people rewrite my life story for their convenience. So I did what a lot of people don't expect when they push a quiet man too far. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I didn't throw punches. I studied the law. I talked to county offices. I talked to the fire department. I talked to real professionals who actually understand boundaries. And the answer wasn't violence. It wasn't revenge. It was something far quieter, colder, and much, much stronger. Steel. And that's where everything really started to change. So here's the thing nobody tells you about finally deciding to stand up for yourself. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels exhausting, like your bones are tired of being polite, like your patience has calluses on it, and you just quietly realize you can't keep living the same day forever and calling it peace. I spent nights at the kitchen table with coffee going cold, Hannah sleeping in the next room with her hand resting over her belly like she was personally guarding our child from the world, and me scrolling through county codes, property statutes, emergency access laws, learning every inch of what I could do legally and what I couldn't do even if it would have felt good. And little by little the picture formed. I couldn't rely on a sheriff. I couldn't rely on the HOA. And I definitely couldn't rely on kindness fixing entitlement. So if they wanted to treat my land like a road, fine. I would install something that would teach them what road ends here really means. The solution wasn't romantic. It wasn't Wild West dramatic. It was clean, disciplined, almost boring in its practicality. Retractable steel bollards. Certified. Permitted. Fire department approved. Unmistakably legal. The county clerk stamped my permit like it was routine, because apparently I wasn't the first person to discover that some people only stop when they physically can't keep going. The fire captain tested the emergency override himself, nodded, and said, "This is better than most commercial setups we run into. You're doing it right." Meanwhile, the shortcut crowd kept rolling. They didn't notice survey flags, didn't care about freshly marked ground, didn't see the warning letters I mailed out certified. Or maybe they saw them and just thought, "He won't actually do anything." People like this always assume someone else will back down before they do. But then the trucks showed up. Concrete mixers, drills, guys in reflective vests who don't talk much because their work speaks louder than they ever could. And there I was, standing with my hands on my hips while two giant steel posts sank into my gravel drive like anchors, like I was bolting certainty into the earth itself. And that's when Meredith finally came storming up the driveway. She didn't march, she hovered like entitlement grants you 3 inches of air beneath your shoes. She didn't even greet me, just pointed like someone demanding service from a bored waiter. "You can't do this, David. This is an established community access route." I wiped sweat from my face and gave her the calmest look I had left. "No, ma'am, it's my land." She waved papers like weapons, talked faster than truth could keep up. Words like precedent and community vote and access necessity. And the county inspector, God bless that tired man, didn't humor a single sentence of it. He checked the permit, checked the measurements, checked the emergency key, then said the sentence I'd been starving to hear for months. "Ma'am, this is entirely legal. This is his property. You don't have any jurisdiction here." Her face broke in a way that wasn't anger at first. It was disbelief, like the universe itself had made a clerical error. Then anger followed, right behind it like a loyal dog. "You're going to regret this, David. Everyone in Mesa Ridge is behind me." She stormed off, but not before she took one long last look at those bollards like they'd personally insulted her ancestors. And you know what's funny? There was a moment that night where everything was quiet again. Hannah rested her head on my shoulder, and the land actually felt like ours for the first time in weeks. And I thought maybe, just maybe, that would scare them off. But here's the thing about pride. It doesn't retreat. It reloads. Word spread through the HOA like scandal always does. Screenshots, rants, neighbors whispering while watering lawns. And it built to something like a challenge, like Meredith had turned trespassing into a community protest. A movement, a chance to prove they still controlled something. Which is exactly how we got to the Monday morning that changed everything. We were ready. Coffee in hand, camera rolling, bollards raised, sun coming up slow over the ridge like even God wanted a front row seat. Then they started showing up. Neighbors watching from the road like it was a parade. Phones out, kids whispering, someone unfolding a lawn chair like EY were settling in for a fireworks show. And right on cue, that white SUV appeared again. Engine revving louder than usual. Music blasting. Confidence turned up so high it was practically screaming through the windshield. She didn't even get out at first. Just sat there staring at the gap between the posts like it was a puzzle she'd already decided she was smart enough to solve. Then she stepped out, raised her phone to the sky, and said louder than necessary, "This is what happens when selfish landowners think they can bully a community. You know, you almost have to respect that kind of delusion. Almost." She climbs back in, lines the SUV perfectly straight. Because I'll give her this. Meredith had courage. Just not the kind that comes with wisdom. The front end slips through. Perfect. No scratches. No contact. You could hear gas from the crowd like maybe she'd actually pull this off. And I'll be honest. For a second, even I wondered. Then physics showed up to remind everyone that it doesn't negotiate with ego. Those side mirrors, wide, firm, unforgiving, caught both posts at the exact same instant. Clang. That sound was biblical. Her car froze. Perfectly jammed. Like the world itself grabbed her by the shoulders and said, "Enough." She panicked. You could see it in the way her hands moved, the way her head jerked. Like maybe if she refused reality hard enough, it would back down. Reverse. Forward. Harder gas. Harder yelling. Harder denial. Then she did the one thing that turned humiliation into destruction. She floored it. Engine screaming. Wheels spinning. Heat pouring out. Smoke rising into the morning like a signal fire announcing that pride was losing a war to common sense. Neighbors yelling. Kids laughing. Someone shouted, "Lady, just stop." But pride doesn't stop. Not until something breaks. And eventually, something did. A pop. A hiss. A deep, ugly, grinding noise that sounded like metal begging for mercy. Silence. Followed by steam rolling out like a ghost leaving its body. And there she was, sitting behind a dead engine, stuck between two steel pillars. Nothing left to fight with but a shaking voice yelling, "Look what he did to my car." And let me tell you, there is nothing lonelier in this world than realizing no one believes your story anymore. Police arrived. Fire department checked safety. Insurance rep got the footage. Everything logged, measured, confirmed. And the only thing louder than that ruined engine was the silence of accountability finally landing. But see, the story doesn't end there. Because consequences don't happen in one loud moment. They echo. They ripple. They crawl into the rest of your life and make themselves at home. And that's where part 3 begins. When a legal battle starts. When a community turns. When a villain isn't just angry anymore. They're broken. And something unexpected happens next. There's a strange quiet that shows up after chaos, like the air itself needs a minute to sit down and process what just happened. And that's exactly what the ranch felt like the day after Meredith's grand performance went up in steam and embarrassment. You'd think that would be the moment everything ends, curtain down, lesson learned, roll credits. But real life doesn't work like tidy movies. It drags you into whatever comes after the explosion, and sometimes after the real story unfolds. The tow truck had barely hauled that poor suffering SUV off my property before Meredith switched gears from, "I've got this under control," to "everyone is going to pay for this." She went straight to insurance, then a lawyer, then the HOA board, waving words like dangerous trap and malicious obstruction like they were weapons she still knew how to use. She had that look like someone clinging to the last piece of identity they had left. This wasn't about a car anymore. This was about losing control, about losing a stage, about realizing the world won't bend just because you're used to leaning on it. Meanwhile, I did the same thing I've been doing for day one. I kept everything quiet, documented everything, let the system I trusted do the talking. And the system spoke. Insurance reviewed the footage, reviewed the notices, reviewed the permits, and said, in the most polite legal tone possible, "This one's on you, ma'am." Then the court said the same thing. And when that gavel dropped, it didn't sound triumphant. It sounded final, like a door closing for good. The HOA that once applauded her confidence turned cautious, then embarrassed, then openly distant. Nobody likes being dragged into a fight they didn't win anything from. And slowly, the board meetings didn't feel like her kingdom anymore. They felt like a spotlight she suddenly couldn't stand to be under. I should have felt victorious. I should have been out on the porch grinning like a man who finally won a war. But all I really felt was relief that the noise had stopped, followed by something I didn't expect. A little sadness for someone who blew up their own life, believing control equals purpose. Weeks passed. The land healed. Cows settled. Hannah breathed normally again. We welcomed our son into a quiet house where mornings belonged to sunlight and coffee instead of engines and arguments. And I thought that was it. Real closure is usually just silence returning. Then one evening, months later, an unfamiliar sedan pulled into my driveway. Not aggressive, not shaky, just cautious. And there she was. Different. Hair tied back. No armor in the form of perfect outfits or leadership posture. Just a tired woman who'd walked a little too far down Pride's road and finally realized it was a dead end. She didn't come with excuses. Didn't come with fancy words. Didn't come with a speech. Just looked me in the eye and said quietly, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I hurt your family. I let my need to feel important turn into something ugly." She talked about losing her job, about watching control slip away everywhere else, about grabbing power anywhere she could find it because standing still felt like disappearing, about how a shortcut wasn't really about distance. It was about not wanting to face the long way life was forcing her to take. And I stood there listening, feeling that strange mix of anger, understanding, and the kind of empathy you don't go looking for, but lands on you anyway when you realize people aren't monsters, they're just broken in loud ways sometimes. We didn't hug. We didn't suddenly become friends. But we shook hands like two people finally standing on equal ground. And that mattered. Today, the Bollards are still there. Most days, they stay down. Not because I need them, but because they remind me of something I didn't know before. Boundaries don't make you hard. They make you healthy. And respect, real respect, doesn't come from shouting, or titles, or votes. It comes from quiet lines drawn honestly, held steadily, and defended without hate. So yeah, that's what really happened out here. A land dispute that was never really about land. A war that was never really about roads. A villain who turned out to just be a very human mix of fear and ego. And a man who learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't fight louder. It's stand firmer. Now I've got to ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you have done the same thing? Would you have let it go? Fought harder? Shown more mercy? Less mercy? Do you think consequences went too far? Or not far enough? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you stand on property, pride, and community lines that should never be crossed. Share this if you've ever dealt with someone like this. And if you've been on either side of a situation like this, I really want to hear what you learned from it. Because stories like this aren't really about one ranch or one HOA. They're about all of us trying to figure out what respect really means before life forces us to learn the hard way.